So I want to tell you about something I overheard at the National Airline. Well, it's not something I overheard, actually. It's something I got pulled into a conversation about what's going on with the water. And they're talking about how it's about to break, how it's going to be big news. And I don't see it breaking or anything. It's been like a week, and there are people who are consuming this stuff and getting hurt, and families involved, of course. People trying to, fight cancer like we were using juicing. And I feel that I have to share what I was told. And you know how I talk about how chemical, fertilizers and all these things are water soluble, and so they're just uptaken into the plant. It's like force feeding the plant. Well, if your water is contaminated, if your well's contaminated, then you're going to have a serious issue. So what am I talking about? You know how we're afraid that, because the loosening of EPA laws and restrictions on like air protection, water protection, those kinds of things, are going to have consequences? Well, they did. And so we have the situation now where fracking water is in the irrigation for these farms, for many farms, and it's not just California, you know what I mean? But they're talking about how it's going to be this breaking news, how it's going to be all this stuff, and how they want to do something about it and get ahead of it, get on top of it. But I think we just first need to tell everyone that they shouldn't eat brassicas right now. That brassicas are, they're hyperaccumulators, and they're going to bioaccumulate all the toxins in the soil, in their body, in their leafy green parts. It's not like how trees are filtering things and then putting the fruit out. You know what I mean? This is those plants are very much water. I mean, they're mostly just made out of water. So I'm hearing all this, and I'm like, oh snap! Is that why we're not eating the kale that we keep buying? We've got some kale here, but I'm like treating the soil, and so I'm like, I don't know about that kale yet. I got to get the soil up to health, because you know what I mean? I know what I want, and I know how. I don't know what's in the soil right now, and so I'm, working with it and bringing the organic matter, just like I do everywhere I go, till I feel like things are ready, and then I start eating from the garden, from that soil. And I'm realizing that my own hesitation there is the hesitation from the stuff in the store, and maybe my gut biome had told me or warned me on some gut level, and that was why we were letting these things that we were buying, you know what I mean, go limp, go bad in the fridge, and then turn into compost. And we used to eat kale all the time. We used to get broccoli and cauliflower all the time. We stopped recently, and now I'm backtracking in my mind about where, you know what I mean, did I eat the kale another time, and was that correlated to me getting sick? And I'm like, oh man, well, what do I need to be doing, to be taking to deal with this contamination that's in these plants? And it all comes back to soil. It's like that buffer, that reason, when I was talking to Rascal Turbeville about working with those, those crazy Chevron waste pits, those petroleum waste pits in the middle of the Amazon, there's plants growing right up next to it, he was telling me. And it's because there is that biological, that fungal, that bacterial, that buffer, that protection there that is protecting those plants. And those plants definitely are getting stuff too, I'm sure, but they're still functional. And so it's that we've got to get to that living level in our soils, that they will provide that buffer for us at such a level that it won't get into the foods. Or we need to know which plants are the ones that accumulate that, and then we need to know what to do with them when we're done after accumulating. And then we need to know which plants are safe, you know what I mean, to eat. And so that's why I've been doing all these videos on soil, because it's like if we don't get our soil right, our food won't be right. If we don't have our food right, then we're going to be sick. They're talking, one of the examples they were talking about was like the E. coli, outbreak on that spinach farm. And they're talking about even 300 feet deep in their well, the nitrates were so high that they had like a serious load of nitrates per square inch. They're measuring it per square inch. The nitrate, form that they're talking about was from the CAFO. So it was like they were fertilizing their fields with CAFO, a leachate that had infected their water. And so that's what was going on there. And in my mind, immediately, I was like, oh, if they had only known about EM, if they had only tested their water, if they had only been aware of what they could have done to make it so that their water was safe, with some simple soil science, some simple understanding of how to cleanse these things out. Even with lead, we talked about recently in the podcast about how lead can be bonded with iron and phosphorus to create pyromorphite crystals, which are not bioavailable. We've talked about all these things lately. We talked about glyphosate, how they've figured out that dielectric barrier discharge. There's numerous articles on this. We're talking about plasma. We're talking about ozone. We're talking about UV light, UV radiation. We're talking about all of those things. And it's sterilizing the soil. So that's why we need the compost. Yeah, that's why we need to bring back that life. We need to be good at this stuff. And we need to bring back that buffer, that organic matter. Because just because we remove it from that field in this expensive, high energy, intensive process perhaps, doesn't mean that, it's necessarily safe. Because like if there's heavy metals still present, that we take out the glyphosate, then we need to bond that with something, primarily organic matter. We're in a situation where we really need to be wise. We need to be testing way more. We need to have people caring and demanding about these things so that we have more testing. And we need more people building gardens with healthy, living, vibrant soils so that they buffer against anything in the rain, because stuff's in the rain too. And we need to have safe food so that we just have a baseline in our normal daily lives, so that when we're going out and we taste something and we go, I'm not going to eat any of this. I'm okay, thanks. I always thought I was hungry when I'm not. And your body will immediately tell you like, you shouldn't eat this, because you know exactly what a strawberry should taste like. You know exactly what a blueberry should taste like. You know exactly what lettuce tastes like, looks like, feels like, you know what I mean? This is the most important thing. This is our bodies. This is our children's bodies. So for me, I just feel like I had to share that brassicas, because they're hyper accumulating these issues. And I would say like all greens, right? Lettuces are like basically water. So my family and I were avoiding brassicas from the store, avoiding like leafy greens from the store. We're buying things from farmers locally that we know that are, getting their stuff that are like watersheds that are fed off of the creeks, that are, watersheds on these mountains like around us. And we know that these sites, their water is affected by what's above them, you know what I mean? And if we know what's above them and we know how it's being treated, then we know what kind of situation they're actually dealing with. So I'm not trying to start a panic, but I want people to know what I heard, because, you know what I mean? If one of my students, if one of my members of my family or people that I knew or was juicing these brassicas and was getting poisoned by fracking fluids that are in those that are still intact in the kale, in the brassica, and they're getting sick in this mystery crazy illness, and they're being able to trace it back. And it's going to come out is what this person was saying. There's like, this is going to hit the news. And when this hits the news, farms are going to be hurt. And I'm like, people are being hurt. And so that's why I had to say something. I had to reach out. I had to make this video so that you have the information too, so that everyone can make the choice themselves and start testing more things and start growing rich, living soil to create biological buffers against the uptake, and then also testing your soil so that you can make really wise choices, strategic choices, of what to do to deal with actual things that are in there that aren't going to just be taken out by composting a few times. I mean, when you have high lead levels, literally, you can take them down. You can turn them into these crystals. And it's documented. This is easy to do. We just have to do it. So we need to figure this stuff out. We need to talk this out. We need to create a system of remediation that is sophisticated enough to serve people. I mean, I have questions like, what do you do with the sunflower stalks now that they've bioaccumulated the lead? What do you do when you know that there's probably toxins, but you can't afford the tests? What do you do when your water is high in nitrates? These things are so critical, but we only think about them and then we only start dealing with them in specific when we test. So I'm here to both pass on what I heard, not as a stamp of like, this is like a peer-reviewed article or anything like that. This is what I heard. They're taking legal action. There's stuff that's going to happen. There's lots of like rumble in the jungle right now over this. And I think that everyone needs who's not involved in like this whole, like rallying the troops to deal like politically. I think we, the people, need to know what is actually going on right now. So that's why I wanted to share it. And that's why I'm doing my soil course and book and all this stuff, because we need protocols and we need to get the experts together to discuss all this stuff in specific and to discuss all the new things that they're doing. And that's really what I do with my courses. I create these filters, but I feel like with permaculture, I was covering things, I was expanding things. But with the soil, I mean, this hits its home on a deeper level. This is affecting our families. This is affecting families right now. This is the next bite we eat. This is the next bite a baby eats somewhere right now. This is the next juice someone is about to drink that they think is going to heal them, and they're getting a shot of fracking fluid in that. And it's beyond words. That idea. And so that's why I had to share. So I'm Matt Powers, grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And I would avoid the brassicas right now. I would be growing my own. I would be eating, and by the way, growing kale and brassicas is really like the easiest thing in the world, but make sure that your soils are healthy so that you're not taking in bioaccumulated toxins. Be safe out there.